Thank you, everyone. I am going to get started because you guys are all here, and people can just continually roll in as we get this started. I appreciate all of you joining us for our Catch a Contact Career Exploration Series. If most of you have gotten this email, then you know that we traditionally do an in-person summit in partnership with the Department of Labor, and we've gone to most of your communities to provide information on cannabis, the cannabis industry, and kind of what that means for you. And most of that is geared around careers and workforce. And so today I have Dan Kaufman Burson from the New York State, Department of Labor's CEED team, and he is joining us. So he'll be presenting after me on cannabis and what they do in the Department of Labor and the resources that they have available. And I'm sorry, you guys, I just messed up my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second and I'm going to reset that. And so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about, what these careers look like today. And then I'm going to open it up to you guys for questions. This is a series, so each day focuses on something different. Today, we're going to focus on what careers are available across license types and again, what those roles actually look like, the skill sets, so that you guys can start thinking about the different options available in this industry. I think a lot of times people think of just retail and dispensary, but there's so much more. And so I kind of want to open it up. Dan, did you want to introduce yourself before I get started?
Sure. Thanks so much, Tiffany. I just wanted to say hello very quickly. Dan Kaufman Burson with the New York State Department of Labor's CEED team. I'll be speaking after Tiffany. It's great to be here with you all. Thanks so much for joining. Back to you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Dan. All right, guys, so I'm going to get started. So this is our career exploration series. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the roles in cannabis, and then I'm going to go over some NYSCC data that we collected through the summits. And then I'm going to kind of tell you guys more about the data that we got and what the community feels like about the cannabis industry. So what we do know is that cannabis is going to have a major impact in employment and economics in New York, right? A 2021 report estimates that 2.6 billion in retail sales would generate over 50,000 jobs, right? And 2.2 billion in employee compensation per year. 4.7 billion in value added and 6.1 billion in total economic output by 2027. You guys will have access to this deck that I'm sharing with you today, so you can pull these things and these videos that I have linked in here. But that's major, right? That's great for New York State and this new industry that we've now been able to legalize. Thankfully, I do want to make note that MARTA will have its 3-year anniversary coming this March 31st. And so when we decided to legalize this industry, we opened ourselves up to this economic impact. And so I'm really excited for New York and New Yorkers and all that's going to come from this new industry here. I mean, if you think back, we haven't really had a new industry in New York since maybe, I mean, if we're not talking about tech and actually hands-on the automotive industry. And so this is going to be very beneficial to New Yorkers in our generations to come, our families. So I'm excited. Now I want to dive into kind of what those careers look like. And then we can talk about the roles and the skill sets needed for them. So in New York right now, there are 6 different license types available. There's a cultivation license, a processing license, a distribution license, a micro business license, a retail license, and a lab license. And under all of those licenses, I kind of wanted to talk about what roles look like for those positions. Or for those license types. So, you know, New York will eventually have other license types, as some of you have followed New York, but within these different licenses, like for instance, in retail, there's also delivery and on-site consumption, which will eventually in the future be a license as well, its own license type. But I just kind of want to tell you guys more about these licenses and then where you might be able to fall under them based on your skill sets, right? So if we're talking about cannabis, we're going to talk about seed to sale. So that whole process chain. In New York, there's a two-tier process or a two-tier system. So you have kind of the cultivation and distribution and processing on one side, and then the retail on the other. And so they don't mix that all. And they did that purposefully so that there couldn't be kind of these vast monopolies in our state. And also to offer more opportunity to community members that were trying to get in, for whether that be entrepreneurial or whether that be for jobs, right? It just opens up opportunities. And so when we talk about cultivation, the cannabis cultivation is the process of growing and producing cannabis plants for various purposes. This includes medical, recreational, or industrial. And I do want to point out that in New York, we do have a medical cannabis program and an adult use program. And so these job types can fall, some of them will fall under medical, some of them will fall under both, and some of them will just fall under adult use, or they'll use different terms. So if we're talking about cultivation, some of those roles include things like a lead cultivator or cultivator. A cultivation tech could be a name for it, a master grower or head grower. These are people who oversee an entire cultivation process, ensuring optimal plant growth and quality, and their responsibilities include developing and implementing cultivational plans, managing cultivational staff, and monitoring plant health. So, there it kind of the plant stops with them type of deal, right? They're controlling the quality or the whole process from beginning to end for the cultivation of the plant as a head grower. Then you might have someone that is a fertigation specialist or a nutrient specialist, and they develop and implement nutrient solutions for cannabis plants. They ensure that they have the proper balance of nutrients for optimal growth, and their responsibilities include testing the soil and water quality, adjusting nutrient formulations, and monitoring the plant nutrient uptake. So, depending on what type of facility you're in, you could be doing this by hand, literally pouring this in and mixing it up, or you could be using computer systems that are set up to help you uh, provide these nutrients to these plants. So it does vast, and the skill sets that you need can vary depending on where you're applying, right? And so you think of that. Then we think of pest and disease control. If we're talking about plants, we definitely need that, right? And their responsibility is obviously identifying pests and diseases, selecting the appropriate methods of control. And that's so important because these are plants that we're going to consume. So we want to make sure that they're using the right things. Harvesting technicians. Harvest and load is when the plant is done growing and now we need to harvest it. And their responsibilities include things like selecting the right time for harvest, trimming and drying the plants, and preparing them to be processed and stored, right? And so those are the type of things that we see under cultivation. There's also things like quality control, a nursery assistant, which they care for small plants, clones and baby plants, seedlings. And then there's even a record keeper, which technically is an ancillary role, but someone needs to keep track of everything that's happening with the plants because these are state regulated. So just thinking of that, those are the type of roles that would fall under cultivation. Those aren't the only roles. Please know that any roles that I'm stating aren't the only roles. I just wanted to give you guys a really holistic kind of view of roles for license types. The next license type is processing. And for cannabis processing, that involves transforming raw cannabis or the plant material into consumable products, like extracts, edibles, concentrates, and topicals, right? Um, so the roles included in processing could be extraction technician. They operate specialized equipment to extract cannabinoids and terpenes from cannabis plant material. Their responsibilities include selecting the appropriate methods for extraction, monitoring extraction perimeters, and ensuring the product purity and consistency. When you think of that, honestly, there are a lot of things that kind of align with chemistry there, right? And so those are the type of roles you need. Not you don't actually necessarily have to be a chemist, but you're practicing some of those. And a lot of people are already doing this and already have these skill sets. And that's why I want you guys to really think about these different jobs, because some of you are already doing this. And so also product formulator, that's kind of under that line too. Confectionery chef, people who are creating different recipes for different products. That's needed. Consulting for that as well. Quality control. Uh, you want to make sure that as a quality control, there's the cannabis products to ensure that they're meeting safety and purity standards. Those responsibilities include um, performing laboratory tests, identifying potential contaminants, and documenting test results. So just making sure that things have a consistency there and they're being done in the right way. And honestly, this is kind of where laboratories would fall too, because this is where the testing comes in, right? After cultivation, after you've cultivated your product, now you're going to send it off for testing. And so laboratory technicians, they test the cannabis products so we can know the potency, right? The residual solvent testing and pesticide screening. So we know that pest and disease control tech did their job right. And their responsibilities include operating and analytical equipment, interpreting test results, and maintaining laboratory records. Product supervisor is a role under processing, um, where you're overseeing the production process and ensuring efficiency and compliance and manufacturing of cannabis products, right? And the responsibilities include managing production staff, scheduling of the batches, and maintaining production records. So there's a lot that goes into that. There's a regulatory specialist, packaging and labeling, research and development scientists. There is a lot that goes into the processing end of cannabis. And so there's a lot of roles there. So now we'll move on to distribution. Distribution of cannabis is the process of transporting and supplying cannabis products from a licensed cultivator or processor to a licensed retailer or dispensary, right? And these roles include things like dispatcher. They oversee the entire distribution process from order fulfillment to delivery. Their responsibility for managing inventory, scheduling deliveries, and ensuring compliance and regulations. And so they not only have to know New York State regulations, but they also have to be good at that logistics, right? Delivery drivers, which I want to say can also fall under retail right now in New York State. And so delivery drivers, they transport the cannabis. Inventory control specialists, procurement. So an inventory control specialist would track and manage the inventory. Procurement would be the one who talks to the retailer about the products that they want to sell in their store based on maybe what the community wants. There's a lot that goes into that job. Knowing what's selling and what the community needs are is so important. Um, then there's a distribution technician, and they really essentially are the packaging and labeling the products for shipment. And so they're assisting in the inventory control and other warehouse tasks. Then you have just mechanics, you have technicians because there's trucks, right? And they have to be maintained. And so you have all these jobs that fall under that. Then you have customer service representatives for people who are calling in, right? You need to make sure that your customers are taken care of because you're in a distribution center. And then you think about the sales of this. They have to sell this product. So they need the sales manager, who's essentially responsible for making sure that this product is moving out of the distribution center. You have quality control to make sure that the products are coming in, although they've already passed, the lab and that processing, part. Now, what about making sure there's consistency in the products you're giving your customers, and the methods that you're implementing in your distribution center to make sure there's an even flow and good flow. So there's just a lot that goes into that. And so those are kind of the roles that fall under distribution. Now I'm going to go into micro business. I do want to point out that micro business is a kind of a combination of everything. So micro business in New York State is a license that authorizes everything under the supply from seed to sales. So you can do cultivation, you can do processing, you can do distribution, retail, sale, and delivery, and of their own licensed cannabis products. I do want to point out that you have to cultivate and do one of the other things. You don't have to do them all, but you have to at least do one of the other things. And so in this space of micro business license, honestly, everything falls under there. All of the different license or all of the different roles that I just pointed out, in addition to other roles like marketing, to make sure that people know your craft cannabis product. Community outreach, I think, is so important in this because a micro business really makes me think of co-op and community kind of organizing together, because maybe you know how to cultivate really well and your friend knows how to do the processing on the other end really great, right? And so you've always grown and they've always created great edibles. And so, like, how do you put that together? So I think here, there's a lot of space for community and community type of roles and outreach. And so I just wanted to point that out. And then obviously there's administration and other roles that fall under micro business. But I just wanted to kind of delve into that and let you guys know that under this license, everything else exists as well. And I think there's even more room to expand on what those roles look like, especially when it comes to community impact. And then lastly, we'll go into retail, which includes on-site consumption. And cannabis retail is the sale of cannabis products to consumers, typically always through licensed dispensaries and storefronts. I want to say in New York State that we have medical retail and we have adult use retail. And so under those, you'll find different language for different roles. For instance, you might hear dispenser on the medical dispenser side, or patient, uh, even patient liaison. There are different words for those roles. And then on the retail side of it, or adult use retail side of it, you may hear things like bud dispenser or bud tender, or even just dispenser. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. And then on the medical side, there's also roles that include like just nursing. You can be a nurse and work in cannabis, or a doctor and work in cannabis. So there's different roles that fall on that medical side that obviously don't fall on adult use. But I just kind of want you guys to be thinking about that too, because there's a lot of people who are nurses that may want to work in cannabis, and there are opportunities on the retail side, and what that looks like for you, right? So what is the role of a dispenser? Well, they provide direct customer service to cannabis consumers. They assist them in selecting the appropriate products based on their needs and preferences. And so the responsibilities include an in-depth knowledge of cannabis products, educating customers on product usage, and the effects and processing customer transactions. And so there's a lot that goes into that. In New York, you do need to know there's certain language you can use and not use, because cannabis is still federally illegal. So you just need to be conscious of that. But they're great roles. And right now they're entry level roles as well. Then you have inventory management. And I do want to point out that a lot of these roles in New York, right now, they are entry level. And I mean, some of them do require a certain level of experience, and you may have that in other roles that you have done. And in another one of these sessions, we're going to talk about your transferable skills and what that looks like in cannabis. So we're not going to get into that today, but I do want you to think about that. Like, some of these roles may require a skill set, and you may already have that skill set. because you gained that in another role. So back to inventory specialists. So they're just going to make sure that the cannabis products that they're dispensing are their adequate stock levels, right? And that they're the things that the customers and the consumers want. A cashier is similar to a dispenser. Compliance officer, they're going to ensure that all the retail operations are adhering to state and federal cannabis regulations. Responsibilities include training the staff, compliance procedures, conducting audits of retail activities, and maintaining compliance documentation. The manager of the store is going to manage everything from beginning to end, so from the front end to the back end. There's also security guard. They provide security for the dispensaries, ensuring the safety of the employees, the customers, and the cannabis products. Their responsibilities include monitoring the premises, preventing unauthorized access, and responding to security incidents. Then we have things like visual manager, right? They're going to create an inviting and appealing atmosphere within a dispensary, enhancing the customer's experience. Responsibilities include arranging product displays, maintaining store cleanliness, and aligning decor with the dispensary's brand identity. Here we can talk about social media managers, because when we talk about brand, it's going to be so important, especially in New York, as we have so many new brands coming online, that they understand their brand, their identity, and how that transfers through their store and how they set their store up as well. Then you have things like delivery driver. So that's kind of it for those roles. Now I'm going to go into kind of show you. Actually, I'm going to stop presenting and show you a video. Give me 1 second, guys, of a role. And so on YouTube, we have a whole career exploration series, and there's 17 different roles that you can actually see a video and you can watch what this role looks like. I'm gonna show you guys a video from James. He's a fertigation technician, and he's gonna tell you more about this role and what he does in that role.
If my job wasn't to exist in the cannabis industry, it would be like uh, there'd be no plans. Essentially, they'd have nothing to eat. They wouldn't live. It's just like us. We wouldn't exist because we have to eat, and we'd be relying on the sun and rain, which well, hopefully we get some rain. But my name is James Spinaga, and I am a fertigation technician at Stizzy. What attracted me was I had a family friend who told me about it, and I had a background in doing swimming pools. So they said, we think you'd be a perfect fit for our fertigation. If I was to, recommend this position to somebody, I would tell them to be really observant, be someone who pays attention all the time, because that's what's important, is paying attention and observing and having a lot of patience, because when you are dealing with nutrients, pH balancing, it's not instant. It takes time, So you got to sit there, and you can't just throw something into the water and be like, okay, there's the number I want. It'll go real, to the number, but then it'll start dropping down as soon as you turn your back. So you got to give things time to mix. And if you have that, patience, you're able to observe and, pay attention to things, then that's probably the best. The training in fertigation was more so like understanding the equipment side of it, understanding what each valves do. I guess you would just start with, what I started with was, understanding what each function does. when it comes to the valves and everything, the drain valve, the mixing valve, the feed valve, all these are important to know. So we'd run through that, and then you would start learning how to mix nutrients, the formulas and, ratios that they have. Because everything is always, they're modifying everything all the time. So you're always learning something new. The most exciting thing working in fertigation, I would definitely say, is meeting with analytics, essentially. Like I said, I meet with them throughout the day, and we see in real time how, feeds are going through, how each room is taking everything, and the outcome of it. Does this room like the EC's high? Does this room like the EC's low? And, you start learning more and more and learning what they are learning at the same time. It's very interesting, you know what I mean? Because it's like I never thought of myself as too much of like, with computer and analytics or anything like that. But I find myself learning it now just because of here, because I'm monitoring and I want to know what I'm doing, how it's panning out. And you get to see, the roots of your labor essentially when you go into a room and you're like, oh yeah, these ones are eating good. Stay steezy means to me that I'm part of a team that we're always continually trying to, you know, innovate, and we're trying to, think outside the box. And by that, I'm growing with them, learning new things every day.
So I'm just going to go over quickly um, some data points that we collected when we were doing the Catch a Contact Career Summit in person. So I'm going to share my screen again. And so for the Catch a Contact Career Summit, we had over 5,000 people register for them. We went all across the state with Dan and his team at the New York State Department of Labor's Career and Education Department. And we asked, different registrants about what type of job they were seeking in the cannabis industry. We asked them what their current skills and experience in the field were, whether they were legacy members, meaning someone who had gained knowledge and experience on cannabis under prohibition in New York State. And we asked them other things, how many years of experience they had, what role they wanted. And so what we found was that 90% of the registrants at our event, they're actively seeking employment in the cannabis industry. And this is why we decided to do this specific series, because now licensing has opened up. And if any of you follow the New York State cannabis industry, you'll know that an injunction was recently lifted that allow our retail stores to open, and that it's just been kind of a hard. And now we're at a point where things are looking good for our industry and opportunities are opening up. And so I think it's a great time to make sure that New Yorkers know about these opportunities and what the pathways actually look like, and then how to actually navigate it, so that if you want a job in cannabis, you can land that job. So this is why we're doing that, because so many of our registrants were actively seeking employment in the cannabis industry. We also found that a lot of them were legacy members and they wanted to enter the legal industry. So we found that 70% of the surveyed identified themselves as legacy members, right? And so you already have a skill set, you already have a knowledge. How can we capitalize on that and get you an opportunity in the legal side? And I think it's just about you knowing where the opportunities exist, what those skill sets are, so that you can match them up, because they're definitely transferable, right? And so we want to talk about more about those. The top jobs, when we asked people what job positions they wanted and what they wish to cover in the cannabis industry, 30% of them are actively answer that they wish to work in any sector of the industry. So 33% of people surveyed said they'll work in any job, any role. They just want to get in. And 12% wanted to work in cultivation, 13% as a bud tender, 8% in cannabis sales, and 7% as a bud trimmer. All of those roles exist right now. All of these jobs, you can get a job right now in cannabis cultivation. You can get a job in bud tending, bud trimming, and and or any role. Honestly, there are a lot of opportunities opening up. And as we again see the licenses roll out in the beginning of next year, which is only a month away, we will see, or less than a month now, or December 2nd, right? We'll see opportunities opening up. And according to our survey, 36% of respondents have more than 7 years of experience in the cannabis industry, while 32 have no experience and 32 have between 1 and 6 years of experience. So I'll say we have, again, a lot of people in New York that have skill sets already. You're just wondering where the pathway is and how you get there. And so that's what we're here to do. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are. I kind of wanted to say this because most of you kind of know, but New York State Cannabis Connect, we're a community resource and workforce vehicle in New York. We are, we've kind of been at the forefront of making sure that the community is educated on cannabis and the cannabis industry and what it means for them. It's so important. I myself am from a community not just impacted but harmed, right? And I want to make sure that New Yorkers can really tap in and that this benefits us and our communities and of New York. And so we're about making connections to the cannabis industry and community every day. We've created an ecosystem of resources. And we value accessible information and a personable approach. If you've come to our career summits, they've always been free because we value that. I'm going to play one more video and then we'll give it over to Dan. And this is kind of a video of who we are. We are New York State Cannabis Connect, an organization focused on uniting communities and businesses statewide to the resources they need to be successful in the cannabis industry. We work across the state, everywhere from Albany to Binghamton to Harlem, to connect communities to opportunities. From job summits that cultivate connections to a brand new innovative training platform for future job seekers, we drive access and opportunity for both businesses and communities alike. We believe in the power that a unified, diverse, and open cannabis industry can have in New York. We also believe that New York should avoid the mistakes that other states made during their rollouts. And that's why we believe that by bringing businesses and communities together and providing for them the access to tools, opportunities, and information, we can create a cannabis industry that is equitable for all of New York State.
Collaborating with NYSCC was vital. Like, we could not have done this without them. Just to be able to meet all these different folks from different walks of life really helps me get a better understanding about what the market looks like here, about what impact we're going to create by providing jobs here to this community. This is incredible.
Job seekers that are looking to get into cannabis, go to NYSCC events, network, and meet people.
This is the change. People coming together, educating one another, empowering one another, and then encouraging each other.
You just need this information out. It's so difficult to get as it is. Having it in one spot. Someone like Cannabis Connect offering all this information for free is really what we need.
We are New York State Cannabis Connect, driving equity by uniting industry and community. I really appreciate you guys watching that video. And so I'm just going to give it over to Dan, and then we can talk about, the resources that both of our institutions have that are available for you. So Dan, I am now going to share your deck, if that's okay.
Everybody's having a good day. Really appreciate you being here. While Tiffany's bringing that up, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Dan Kaufman-Burson with the New York State Department of Labor's Cannabis Employment and Education Development Unit, or CEED unit. Really thank you so much, Tiffany and Jumani and everybody at the New York State Cannabis Connect team for organizing this great event. We very much enjoyed working with their team across the state at the in-person events, helping people understand the opportunities that the cannabis industry brings, and I'm very much looking forward to participating in this virtual series as well. I'm going to talk for probably about just 15 max 20 minutes to really get to the Q&A session here. I want to get a chance for you all to ask questions. But I'm here to really give you an introduction to the Department of Labor and the CEED unit, and then share some information that we typically provide to job seekers and entrepreneurs that might be interested in cannabis. So next slide, please. So the Cannabis Employment and Education Development Unit, or CEED unit, at the Department of Labor was focused on cannabis, or created to focus on cannabis specifically as it relates to labor. And we're doing a lot of things, but overarchingly, currently we are working to do the things we've listed on the slide here. Working to help build out an equitable workforce in the cannabis industry, really increasing participation for groups that are underrepresented in cannabis traditionally, but also groups from communities negatively impacted by cannabis prohibition here in New York State. Working to highlight opportunity in the emerging adult use market, but also, to Tiffany's point, the medical market, cannabinoid hemp and hemp markets as well in New York State. And a way that we do that is traveling across the state, just providing information on all the opportunities, both in the employment, but also potential business ownership side. We are working to identify education programs in cannabis specifically, and providing connections to them via our webpage at Department of Labor. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the last two take up a lot of time for sure, a lot of my time. One is helping to connect job seekers and businesses with Department of Labor resources, which I'll go over very briefly, and then working to help weave cannabis into Department of Labor systems. As you can imagine, with an older, very large state agency, there are a lot of services and things that we do on a daily basis. I'm working to make sure that somebody can take advantage of those resources regardless of how they participate in the cannabis industry. And next slide, please. So as a really quick overview of the Department of Labor, we serve job seekers, workers, and businesses across New York. Our services are completely free of charge. We have 95 career centers across the state, and through our career centers, we serve 500,000 job seekers and 30,000 businesses per year on average. And that's just to give you a sense for the scale or number of people that we help on an annual basis. And next slide, please. So at one of our career centers, people can connect with great free resources. Specifically for job seekers, they can get help with career counseling, job search assistance, resume and cover letter writing. People can connect with workshops on networking, interviewing, and more. People can connect to services specifically for veterans, people who may be justice impacted, and connect to services for people with disabilities. And then everybody can get access to computers, phones, and even fax machines, if anybody still uses those, to use for a job search. So some great free resources at our career centers. This link here at the bottom of the slide is a way to find your local career center in your area. I can also help somebody find their local career center if they're interested. And I do like to point out that it's a good idea to make an appointment. So contact the career center via telephone, make an appointment before you go in, just to make sure that there's somebody available to help you immediately upon arriving, versus going in, unannounced and just having to wait for some time till somebody's available. So it's always a good tip. And next slide, please. So in addition to our great career centers, we do have some online job seeker resources that I wanted to point out very briefly. Number one, we do have a cannabis workforce development website at the Department of Labor with great content for both job seekers and businesses. For job seekers in particular, we have short summaries of expected jobs across the cannabis industry, really just to give you a sense for what those jobs might entail. We also have a new Finding a Cannabis Job page that you can actually use a step-by-step guide, everything from a self-assessment to applying for a job and preparing for an interview, and helping to connect you to resources to help people on their journey of looking for a job in the cannabis industry. I mentioned that we're tracking cannabis education programs. We have a list of cannabis-specific programs at SUNYs, CUNYs, community colleges, and private colleges and universities across the state. We have links to those programs on our Cannabis Workforce Development website in case anybody would like to connect with formal education in cannabis. I do provide a link here to that website. It's dol.ny.gov/cannabis for anybody that's interested. Next, we have the Virtual Career Center, which is a great free online platform for searching for work, building a resume, trying to figure out if you have any gaps in your skills based on particular jobs that you're looking for. So that's a great resource. North Star Digital Literacy and Coursera are both online learning platforms. North Star Digital Literacy can help people develop their computer-based skills, whether it's actually using a physical computer, the hardware, or software that goes into using computers, including Microsoft Suite software. Coursera is an online course provider. They've partnered with educational institutions across the US and I believe Canada. And they provide a ton of great online courses that people can use at their own pace to learn a whole range of skills, regardless of what that might be, what you're interested in. There's likely a course on Coursera that relates to it. There is cannabis-specific content on Coursera for anybody that's interested. And then there's Interview Stream, which is a great free web-based interview program that you can use to actually develop your interviewing skills if you haven't done that in a while. And next slide, please. So in addition to our job seeker resources, I know we're mainly career focused today, but just wanted to point out really quick that we have a business engagement team at the Department of Labor that handles services businesses across the state, and they can help businesses with a lot of hiring related tasks. For instance, as I've listed on the slide, they can help businesses, including cannabis businesses, post jobs. They can help connect businesses to career fairs and recruitment events. They can help skill match job seekers in our job seeker database to actual hiring needs for businesses. They can help businesses navigate tax credits and hiring incentives, and they can also help businesses understand labor law and regulations in New York State to make sure that businesses can remain compliant. If we have any entrepreneurs on the call and they want to connect with our business engagement team, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you to the team in your local area if you're interested. And next slide, please. And still related to businesses, as you probably know, or you could guess, the Department of Labor does not grant business licenses for cannabis businesses. That's all being handled through the Office of Cannabis Management. They're the state agency overseeing the adult use medical and cannabinoid hemp industries in New York State. They're the ones that are granting business licenses in our state. So we always point people to the cannabis.ny.gov website if they're interested in starting a cannabis business. I do want to point out we do have an open application window for people to apply for 5 different license types through the Office of Cannabis Management. I think it's a cultivation, processor, micro business license that Tiffany mentioned, distribution, and retail dispensary. So there is an application window open currently for anybody that's interested in applying for a license immediately. That application window is closing on December 18th. So just wanted to make everybody aware. And next slide, please. So in New York State, there is a focus on social and economic equity, really trying to start righting some of the wrongs from that occurred with cannabis prohibition. It really focused for New York State, Office of Cannabis Management, Department of Labor, but all the work related to cannabis is social and economic equity. And I'd like to provide some examples of the social equity focus of cannabis in New York State, just to make people aware. Number one, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, which is or MRTA that Tiffany mentioned. Just going to plug in my computer. Bear with me one second. MRTA really incentivizes participation in the industry for people that were negatively impacted by cannabis prohibition, including people that spent some time in communities what's called disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. MRTA does set a goal to award 50% of all adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants, which are defined groups, both in MRTA, but also also defined by the Office of Cannabis Management. And also those social and economic equity groups are receiving a 50% reduction in application and licensing fees, and will receive technical assistance and training, both in applying for the license and after they receive a license, receiving training and actually how to operate a business, which is great. And then just a couple additional examples of the social equity focus of MRTA. Number one is that MRTA called for the automatic expungement of cannabis convictions in New York State for conduct that's now legal. So expungements, for anybody that doesn't know, an expungement means that an arrest, a court case, a conviction for a prior marijuana-related offense in New York is now treated as if it never happened. So, on a school application, job application, applying for housing, if an application asks if somebody's been arrested or convicted of a marijuana charge and that charge is actually expunged, that person can answer no to that question. So we do like to point out that those expungements are happening automatically, but people are not being notified that their prior cannabis conviction was expunged. So we recommend that people pull their rap sheet just to make sure that their record is properly reflecting the non-existence of a charge if it should have been expunged. And another way that people can check whether their record is accurate is to request what's called a certificate of disposition from a court where a case was decided. And people can look into certificates of disposition on the nycourts.gov website if they're interested. I do like to point out a couple things. One, our career centers can help people pull a rap sheet if they need help. And number two, in addition to the automatic expungements, there are, convictions for prior cannabis-related offenses in New York that may not be eligible for automatic expungement, but could be eligible for other sealing or relief steps. And people can explore that option through the nycourts.gov website as well. And then finally, the last example of social equity in New York that I like to point out for the cannabis industry specifically is New York State labor law changed, effectively creating a protection for people's legal use of cannabis outside of the workplace. We're going to talk about that next. In the next slide, please. So in New York, labor law changed, again, to really create a protection for people's legal use of cannabis outside of work. And just want to talk about that a little bit. In New York State, an employer can still take disciplinary action against somebody coming into work while impaired if it lessens the performance of their duties or interferes with an employer's obligation to provide a safe and healthy workplace. An employer can take action against somebody using cannabis while at work, even when on break, and employers can still prohibit employees from bringing cannabis onto an employer's property. And that includes, office space, company vehicles, lockers, break rooms, and desks. That being said, in New York, unless there is a state or federal law that makes a cannabis test a requirement for a specific position, so unless there's a state or federal law that requires it, an employer cannot test employees for cannabis or use a cannabis test result related to a hiring or firing decision. And that's the really important part. Not every state that legalized adult use cannabis, or medical cannabis for that matter, created this protection for people. And we want to make sure that people are aware, because it's a really important part of the process here in New York and a really important highlight of the social equity focus of New York's cannabis law in general. I do like to point out, I have a link to a guidance document that the Department of Labor put out around cannabis, adult use cannabis in the workplace. So for anybody who's looking for a little bit more information around cannabis and work, this is a great guidance document to look to. Next slide, please. And related to labor law and cannabis protections specifically, if you feel that you've experienced or witnessed a violation of labor law or worker rights, including discrimination related to your use of cannabis outside of work, please file a complaint directly with the New York State Department of Labor's Division of Labor Standards. You can do so by filling out a complaint form. You can find it on their website. You can reach out to them at lsask@labor.ny.gov or call the 1-888 number that you see here. We don't want to hear about, bad actors or discrimination that's occurring, but we need to hear about it so that we can actually enforce the labor law and make sure that people's protection for cannabis use is actually enforced across the state. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go too deep. Tiffany did an incredible job giving you a sense for the types of employment that'll be available across all of the cannabis industries, whether it's adult use, medical, in New York State. But just wanted to highlight a few points for you in case it's helpful. Number one, like Tiffany said, we do expect thousands of new jobs to be created in the cannabis industry, effectively from nothing, right? These jobs didn't exist previously. This is a completely new industry coming in, which is really, really exciting. And we want to make sure that people understand there are opportunities for them in the cannabis industry, regardless of what they're interested in or regardless of what their experience has been in the past, which is great. There are a variety of careers for people, both within the seed to sale life cycle of growing, creating products and selling and testing cannabis, but also in the ancillary spaces that Tiffany had talked about. We'll talk a little bit about ancillary jobs in a minute, but really important that people understand there's something for everybody, regardless of what they've done in the past, regardless of what they're interested in. Tiffany, you mentioned this, you don't need prior cannabis work experience to get a job in the cannabis industry, especially in an entry-level role where you can get in and move up from there. We're not going to talk about transferable skills too much today. I'll briefly talk about it, but there's going to be another session later on in this great series talking about transferable skills, how you can highlight them when looking for work in cannabis. Again, it's all about understanding the skills you've developed working outside of the cannabis industry or in the legacy market, and positioning and highlighting them when applying for work in the cannabis industry. And then that last thing I'd like to highlight is somebody does not have to be a cannabis user to work in cannabis, right? Not everybody thinks about that. People may feel intimidated by working in cannabis because they don't consume it. That's not the case, right? These are jobs, great paying jobs that people can find benefit from just through the wages that they may receive or great companies that they can work for. And next slide, please. So just wanted to provide just a really high level view of the different license and permit types created by MRTA. I'm not going to do too much of a deep dive, but in a couple of slides, we're just going to have kind of a list of different job types created across these different license and permit types, just to give a sense and to get people thinking about what they might be interested in. So next slide, please. I do like to point out that through MRTA, local areas have the option to opt in or out of two different license types in the adult use space. Municipalities, towns, villages could opt out of retail dispensaries and on-site consumption spaces. They could not opt out of cannabis altogether, so they couldn't prevent, cultivation, processing, distribution, or delivery into their local areas, but they could prevent dispensaries and on-site consumption spaces from operating. It's really important to note that, just because that could impact somebody's ability to find a job or in one of those different businesses, or to actually start one of those two different businesses. So we like to make people aware so they can make an educated decision about what type of job or what type of business they'd like to participate in based on where they live. And for anybody that's interested in understanding what their local area has actually decided to do, you can check the Rockefeller Institute. They are tracking those opt-in, opt-out statuses as they change. And thanks, Tiffany. I saw you moved on to the next slide. I'm not going to do a deep dive on these different types of jobs. Tiffany already did an incredible job providing this information. This is really, again, just to provide a highlight as to the types of jobs created in the adult use, medical, cannabinoid, hemp industries, whether it's in agriculture, product manufacturing, retail dispensing. We can go on to the next slide, please, Tiffany. Also, whether it's in distribution, on-site consumption, delivery, testing laboratories, and sampling firms that handle, the quality assurance testing of cannabis and cannabis products prior to sale to consumers. But then also in the ancillary space, we can think of ancillary services or ancillary jobs as being anything that's not directly cannabis product, or cannabis plant touching. And then really any service that goes into supporting a cannabis business on a daily basis and is really vital to the success of a cannabis business could be thought of as ancillary. So, whether somebody is interested in construction, facilities maintenance, security, web development, IT, HR, payroll, branding, marketing, the list goes on and on. Anything that could go in to supporting a business, including a cannabis business, is an ancillary position. And really what's so exciting about that is just all the potential job opportunities, but also business opportunities for people if they don't necessarily want to work directly in cannabis, but be tangential or ancillary to the industry. A lot of opportunity there in the ancillary space. And then I work for the state government, so I have to point out, if anybody is interested in public service, the Office of Cannabis Management will continue to hire as they continue to roll out the regulatory framework in the market here in New York. And then other state agencies may create their own cannabis teams similar to the Department of Labor. Next slide, please. And we're getting towards the end, folks, probably just another 5 minutes or so, then we'll open this up for questions and answers. I'm not going to do a deep dive here on transferable skills. That'll be another session in this series, but just provide this slide just to get people thinking about what skills they've developed working outside of the cannabis industry, and how they relate directly to working in cannabis positions. So this slide just has different business or licensed types in cannabis, and then different skills needed to work for those different businesses. Again, just to get people thinking about what skills they've already developed, how they relate to working in cannabis, and have to give again shout out to ancillary positions, for people that have worked in construction, security, marketing, web design, IT, software development. All of those skills go into working and supporting cannabis businesses is a great thing to keep in mind as you look for work or business ownership in cannabis. And next slide, please. So we're not going to do a deep dive on this today either, but I just do want to point out that skills that people have developed working both in cultivating cannabis or selling cannabis before it was legal in New York State, those skills and knowledge are incredibly valuable for working in the regulated market in New York State. We want to make sure people that participated in the legacy market have an opportunity to participate in the regulated market here. Quite honestly, we know what we know about cannabis plants, cannabis products, because of the hard work that people put in before it was legal in New York. And just wanted to point out really quickly, it's all about highlighting that, the knowledge and skills you've developed specifically for job positions you're applying for in the regulated market. And I do just want to point out, just make sure that you're comfortable talking about your experience or your knowledge before you put it in a resume and cover letter. That experience may come up in a job interview. An employer may want to know where your knowledge or skills may have come from. Just make sure you're comfortable talking about it before you put it out there. And just so you know, our career centers can help anybody develop a resume cover letter that they're comfortable with. And next slide, please. And just to give a sense for what wage and salary information is looking like in the cannabis industry, we don't yet have wage or salary information for cannabis specifically in New York State. It's something we're working on. But what we can do is rely on reputable third parties that have done some surveying of the cannabis industry. And what we've done here, we've pulled some information from a salary guide released by Vankst, who's a cannabis recruitment firm. And this information comes from a 2022 salary guide that resulted from surveys that Vankst did of cannabis employees and cannabis businesses across the U.S. to get a sense for what wage and salary information is looking like. I just want to point out a couple things. Number one, we've pulled out information for 3 different business activities going left to right, and then provided salary and wage information going from entry level, moving to management roles, top to bottom across the 3 different business activities, left to right. And just to point this out, number one, while this wage and salary information may not be guaranteed in New York State, it's really great to see some survey data. And more importantly, it's really encouraging to see family sustaining and really good wages as people move up in the industry. When you get to a director, supervisor, management role in cannabis, we're seeing this across the U.S. We're seeing some great wages, which is really, really encouraging and very exciting. And next slide, please. So do want to point this out. Tiffany had mentioned this. We are starting to see cannabis businesses hiring across the state, whether that's the conditional cultivators, processors, retail dispensaries that have licenses already and are operating in New York. We're also seeing medical cannabis businesses or operators that continue to hire across the state. And then we're starting to see ancillary businesses ramping up and starting cannabis teams to support the upcoming industry, whether that's, marketing groups, construction companies, IT, software providers, really starting to see companies that are building out offerings in the ancillary space for cannabis and jobs coming along with that. And just like to point out a couple of places that people can look for cannabis jobs. Check online job boards, such as the Department of Labor's Virtual Career Center, but also Indeed and LinkedIn are good places to look for jobs. Another good tip is to look at individual cannabis company websites, especially in the cannabis space. I noticed that medical operators actually keep their own personal company websites a bit more up to date with job postings, more so than the Indeed, the LinkedIn's, the third-party job posting sites. So your Attains, your Curaleafs, I tend to see that those medical operators keep their individual cannabis company websites a bit more up to date with job postings. Typically, they'll have a careers or job section at the top or very bottom of their website. It's a good place to look for work. And then finally, for anybody interested in public service, the statejobs.ny.gov website is where you'd look for work with the Office of Cannabis Management or any other state agency that you might be interested in working for. And next slide, please. And this is the second to last slide. The last slide is a very, very short one, so we're getting there. But here, just wanted to provide some information on what people can do to really prepare for the major rollout of jobs in the cannabis industry. Tiffany and I both mentioned that there are jobs out there if people want to start applying, but this is just the beginning of the rollout of the cannabis industry. We're going to start seeing a major influx, ideally and hopefully, of jobs in 2024 and beyond as more businesses come online. But that being said, there's things that people can do now to really prepare and set themselves up for successfully finding a career in the cannabis industry. And they can do several things. Number one is a big one: seek out information and educate yourself. Check out the Office of Cannabis Management's website. Check out our Cannabis Workforce Development website at the Department of Labor. New Growth Center is a great training provider. Cannabis Workforce Initiative is also another training provider. New York State Cannabis Connect, I'm sorry I don't have it listed here, but definitely want to shout out their incredible work and all the training and information that New York State Cannabis Connect provides across the state. These are all ways that you can educate yourself while you look for work or ahead of looking for work in the cannabis industry. Another big one, you saw a snippet of me in Tiffany's video. It's always awkward to see yourself on camera, but you saw a snippet of me in one of Tiffany's videos mentioning how important it is to network. When looking for work in any industry, especially a new one like cannabis, developing your professional network is vital to finding a job and putting yourself out there. So find cannabis events that are happening across the state. Go to them. A lot of them are free of charge. They're a great place to meet like-minded individuals and get your foot in the door in the cannabis industry. Second to last, start preparing your resumes, your cover letters, your interviewing skills. It's never too early to work on those things. Our career centers can be a resource for you as you develop your resumes, cover letters. And then finally, continue to check online job boards, whether it's Department of Labor's Virtual Career Center, Indeed, LinkedIn, cannabis company websites, or the state jobs website. As this continues to roll out, more and more jobs will become available. So make sure you're staying on top of that. And then the final slide, please. Just wanted to wrap up and say, if you ever need to reach the CEED team for any cannabis or Department of Labor related questions, please feel free to reach out to us at ceed@labor.ny.gov. I also provide a link here to our cannabis workforce development website for anybody that's interested in learning more. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you so much, Tiffany and NYSCC for organizing. And back to you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was very informational. I love that you pointed out the fact that you don't have to consume to work in cannabis. That's definitely a misconception I see a lot. So I love that you pointed that out, and just all the great resources that are available, you guys. And I'm going to be sharing both of these decks in a follow-up to this. So thank you all for registering. I have your information and I'll share that. I do want to open it up to Q&A. So if anyone has questions for Dan or I, please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. All right. So if you don't know where the hand feature is, it should be at the top of your chat box. And I know, okay, we got some. All right. Anzi, please let me know if I pronounced it right. I'm going to allow you, mic and camera, and you can go ahead with your question. And don't feel like you have to get on camera if you don't want to. Don't worry about it. You can just go ahead and speak if you want. Oh, I think you're muted, even though you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Okay, yes, my question is about how to get certified as a cannabis laboratory service.
How to get certified as a laboratory?
Yes,
you said?
Service and cannabis.
Okay, so like a laboratory tech?
Yes.
Okay. There's different ways that you can do that. I'll give you some information actually, and see more on that. It depends on kind of where you want to fall in that and what where you kind of want your trajectory to be in the lab. But I can give you some basic information on basic lab tech programs and even some cannabis labs to connect with.
Okay, can you send me a link about it, please?
Yeah, I have your email address, Mr. NC, and I will send it to you.
All right,
I'm taking a note right now.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And next, I'm going to mute you again. Next, I have Emma. Hi, M.
Hello, hi. So it's not letting me be on camera, but that's okay.
Okay,
Hi
hold on
everyone.
now. There
Okay,
you
great.
go.
Okay, fantastic. Am I on? Okay, great. Hi everyone. This was a really informative, great resource. I also have to just thank you for the pacing and even the slide, the way it was constructed. You had a lot of information and you put it all in there. So like, just from that respect. So my I more have like questions and also like ways to like, I don't know, alert people about the application process if that's okay.
Yeah,
So
M.
yeah, great. So you have until, if you are interested in licensing, you have until December 18th. I think the last day might be the 19th. Um, please do remember that you do have to get documents, right? So like, even though that's 16 days, it does take some time to get the supplementary documents to prove your status in order to qualify as discounting licensing, right? So I don't know if Tiffany went, because I wasn't here for all of it. For most of it, I was here. Then my computer died. So please, if you are interested, Monday morning, go to the DMV and get a history of your addresses, where you lived. That is a good fast track way to qualify for licensing, and government can take a little bit longer. Um, and I do have like some other questions, but I think I'll just come to like you guys separately because I'm getting a lot of responses from people within the community um, who are interested about little type of things that are happening in the document in the actual application process. Another thing I just want to alert people who are interested, application is lengthy in the sense of trying to understand, like it's very straightforward. It's not anything super hard, not to scare anyone or discourage, but it will take you some time because you're answering some really I wouldn't say super in depth, but it might be something that you're not used to. So it might be important to talk to other people so you can make even something as simple as starting your business, what type of business you want to start up as a business entity, whether it's a sole proprietorship or a S corp, whatever you want to do, LLC. So definitely start. I would say this weekend might be a good time to really start thinking about it more clearly and make steps now. But anyway, thank you so much. My name
Thank
is
you.
Hey, I'm from BMTC. And if you're interested in more cannabis education support services, I will drop my email in the chat and a link.
Please do, M, as well as a link to your program that you have over there. They're creating the numerous programs right now. They're running a security program. So again, another resource, another educational resource. Thank you for jumping on today. Next, we have Anthony. Anthony, I'm going to allow your mic and camera. Please don't feel obligated to get on camera if you don't want to, but please go ahead with your question.
Okay, perfect. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for this presentation. It's wonderful. I have a few questions. So for one, can you work in the public sector while having or applying for a license?
Yeah, I think maybe I can just jump into that one
Yeah,
since it's
thanks.
so working. Anthony, speaking, when you mentioned public sector, you're thinking working for state or local government, right?
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Correct.
So I mean, it'll depend, right? I mean, if you're looking to work for I'm sorry if I'm stating the obvious here, but if you're looking to work for the Office of Cannabis Management, that may not be possible. But if you're looking for working for a different state agency, typically they like to know, whether you are operating a business, separate from the job that you have working for the government, but it's more of just a disclosure requirement. They just like to know what you're doing to make sure there's no conflict of interest. Typically, a lot of times, it's not a kind of a bar on employment at all, unless there is some direct conflict of interest. I hope that answers your question, though.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Okay.
Secondly, how would I go by creating cannabis education events for people in my community to help get them certified for employment and things? Would you guys help partner on initiatives like that?
Well, one, I'll let you go next, Sam. But I think that's what we do. We love to come into the community and make sure that they have that resource and the education, and we love to partner with other organizations that do too. So we definitely think that, I personally think that that could work, right? We could talk offline, Anthony, and get some more information. But when you say certified, I would want to know what you want them certified in, right? Because there's so many different things. Um, so we want to talk more about that, maybe in general, what the community might benefit from, as a whole. We can talk more about that, and then you can jump in.
Yeah, I would say, absolutely. That's what we do all the time is partner with groups that want to bring information to local communities. They're vital to the work that we do. I mentioned this to Tiffany many times that, we need help in getting the message out about free resources at the Department of Labor. And we rely on people to help do that. So certainly, if there's ever a need for, or if Department of Labor would add value by attending or participating in an event, please feel free to reach out. I'll drop the CEED's email address into the chat here, Anthony, if you'd ever like to chat, or for anybody that would like to chat.
Perfect. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm the community liaison for Councilwoman Selvina Brooks Powers in community in District 31 in Queens. And she just assigned me to kind of handle cannabis cases. So I would definitely like to partner with you guys on that. And that kind of explains why I asked that question.
Yes.
I'm kind of working on both ends because I am basically a legacy person as well. And I come from the community full of legacy people. So I want to bring that training so people can see that there's transferable skills into getting something long term. So I would love to partner with you guys on both of those ends. So I'm going to drop my work email in there as well. And just to make it quick, I have one last question. When it comes to licensing, I just put in my license for micro business. Now, I didn't have the chance to run to the DMV to get a printout of my address to prove that I was from a disproportionately prohibited area. So I paid for my personal report that showed my addresses. Would that hurt in any way? Because it does show my addresses, but it's not, I would say the norm that I guess the board.
No, that was only, so I'd like to point out that that's only one method, the DMV, right? There are multiple other ways that you can prove your residency through school, right? If you're registered in a school district, you could go to that school district and ask them for copies of your school records, which will show your address. So there are different ways. I don't think that that would hurt. Emma is actually asking you a question. Emma, are you unable to speak?
Sorry, I didn't want to just jump in speaking, and sorry for the typo. If you have an ID that has the address in which is the CDI on if you go to the Office of Cannabis Management's website and you just kind of scroll down to the bottom, it will be like a community disproportionately impacted map. And then you can put your address in there. So if you have like an ID that, let's say, it was issued between the year requirement, because you have to be, I think if you're a child, it's like 5 years or something like that. And if you are an adult, it's like 7 years of residency. So if you have an ID that was issued between that time that is still like valid, or even if it's not valid, I would even submit that. So I just, again, was giving that as an example because it's a very fast way to prove it from a major organization. You know what I mean? It's just like a fast track way to get other stuff like for your arrest records and stuff like that. There's so many different ways that document can just expedite. Because the thing about this process is that there are different buckets, right? And when you are in different buckets, that gives you a sort of priority in terms of like them looking at you in the document. You know what I mean? Because they're trying to prioritize, at least this is what it is, right? At least 50% of these licenses are supposed to be going to C applicants, right? Or socioeconomic equity. So CDI, that's an example of that. If you're a minority-owned person, that's an example of that. If you're a woman, that's an example of that. If you are a disabled veteran, distressed farmer. So like, if imagine in the perfect world, you took all of those identities at once, you know what I mean? That would just work to your benefit, but you have to make sure you're able to prove that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. And Anthony, yes, please drop your email and me and Dan will definitely reach out and try to coordinate something for your community.
I am also interested in working with you. I am BMCC in by 25 Broadway. We have free services that we are grant funded by the Department of Labor, and we are literally just trying to give the resources back to the community. So if you know someone who's interested in security, if you know someone who's interested in our advanced retail dispensary, it is not only an upskilling technical. Let me put on the camera because it's a series.
And I'll also share something in the follow-up email for BMCC too, for you. If you send me like something, I'll share in the follow-up email to everybody.
Just really quick, just one more minute. And we offer upskill training, we offer job readiness, and we also help people get job placed. And this is at no cost, grant funded. The cost is your time and your effort. So we're really trying to partner with people. We're pretty accessible, being by Battery Park. In most places, like from the Bronx all the way to Staten Island, it can be as 30 to like about an hour, maybe an hour and a half if it's really tough for you deep in Long Island. So, all right, thank you so much, Tiffany. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Em. Thank you for being such a valuable resource as well. Mr. Ansi, I have your email. Anthony, I have your email. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it to Ryan, who has a question. Ryan, I'm going to unmute you and allow your camera. Please feel free. You don't have to get on camera.
Hello. First, I just want to say thank you guys very much. Super informative presentation. It was very, very well put together. You guys did a great job. So I appreciate it. This is a bit of a specific question, so no problem if it's a little too specific, but I'm a junior third-year student at Syracuse University studying computer science with a minor in cannabis studies. I'm super interested about intersecting both technology and cannabis. And over the past 2 years, I've looked into trying to get any sort of job within the cannabis industry or the technology industry. And it's I've noticed that it's oftentimes it's hard to find entry-level jobs within the technology sector of cannabis, as they're looking for people that are already know what they're doing and they're very advanced and they just can pay them to do what they want. So I'm curious if you have any recommendations for trying to get any entry-level or internship type positions that include both cannabis and technology.
I think that is a great question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, because a lot of opportunities come across New York State Cannabis Connect's desk. We actually have a link, and I'll share with you guys to upload your resume. And when you upload your resume through New York State Cannabis Connect, what we try to do is match you with jobs that fit your skill set, right? And so what I can do, Ryan, is offer you some information on those type of different positions. What I'm thinking right now is honestly engineering positions for technology that's being set up in like greenhouses. It's not really, it's more on the processing and even licensed medical. It's not really in the adult use, but it's licensed medical. They're building out facilities right now. There are some, I think, opportunities for maybe interning and kind of seeing what that process looks like as they build that tech. And so I have some connections at some different facilities that are expanding right now in the state. And I'd love to kind of share that and see if I can't connect you with an opportunity for you to actually see what that looks like and get your hands in it. And, you're already in school. So I think that's great. And Dan or Emma, if you guys have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I was gonna add was, a great thing you can do is start networking. There are cannabis events happening across the state, and I can tell you that I've been at dozens where cannabis software providers are there. Leafly, LeafLink, there's a bunch of software providers that in the space. Go talk to people, because a lot of times you'd be surprised. You may think teams are larger than they really are. So you may have an opportunity to talk to somebody that's making a hiring decision, even if a job isn't posted. And so it's a great thing you can do as soon as possible. Go on Eventbrite, just Google cannabis events, Syracuse, and see what comes up and meet people and start talking to people. You never know what that'll bring. So that's all I was going to add.
I think that's great advice, Dan. That's absolutely great advice. There are, and honestly, that's what I would encourage anybody looking for a job in cannabis to do right now. Because honestly, even if you go through Indeed, even if you go through the job board, you really need to find a connection there, because so many people will apply for a job that you need to really bring it back to that interpersonal communication and make sure that you're reaching someone and building that rapport, because it's going to increase your chances. So I'll try to introduce you to some people, Ryan. I have your name on my list. I have Anthony and Nancy as well. And I'll follow up with you guys directly. I'm going to try to offer some resources to point you guys in the right direction. But I definitely agree with what Dan said. There are a lot of events. Specifically, I think one that offers a lot, Cannabis Insider event. I mean, there's so many conferences now. I think there's one going on in Albany in a week or so. And so just getting out there can offer so many opportunities. And like Dan said, you may be speaking with that person that's the decision maker. So
definitely.
Did you have another question, Ryan?
No, that's it. Thank you very much. That was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ryan, the one other thing I had was a lot of schools, and Manuela can talk about this probably too, is a lot of schools will have workforce development offices or job placement assistants for their students. And since I know, Syracuse, obviously you're doing a cannabis minor, Syracuse has put some effort behind their cannabis programming. They may be able to help you connect some dots there too. So that could be an avenue to explore.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think as we go towards like globalization, right, and think about a more modern sort of way when it comes to professional stuff, a lot of these cannabis places, this is a new market for them, so they're forming it in a startup kind of way rather than like a established organization. So like when you like go to Indeed and all this stuff and you see even some of these cannabis jobs, they're having conversations about what jobs need to be made. So your networking is very important right now, because yes, there are a lot of funds that are being allocated. There's a lot of business owners for the first times are realizing about these operational things. And I can tell you right now, BMCC, you're in Syracuse, I'm in New York City, but we are working towards, we call it cannabis security solutions, right? Because we understand that security, even from a security agent place, that can go to so many different places, right? And like from that sort of engineering, sort of like understanding how POS systems work, that's an operational support service that is absolutely needed. They need people who are good at understanding technology, who know how to deal with things, especially from the back end. A lot of these different POS systems might have been great when they saw it in the showroom and sharing discussions, but maybe operation when they're doing retail stuff, it's not really working. And they need someone who has that sort of fast thinking, convergent, divergent kind of thinking. So this is a great time for you. And I support both what Dan and Tiffany said.
Thank you.
Yes. And I also want to say, Ryan, it really depends on where, because M just brought up a good point, retail. It kind of really depends on where you want to get in. I'll say you're in Syracuse, and when I looked up Syracuse, I saw Etain is in Syracuse. Etain, I know, is building a new facility in Buffalo, which isn't that far from Syracuse. But they have, like, those are places where you could start looking, and again, it depends on where you want to fit in with that technology aspect that you bring, right? Having that computer tech, I mean, literally at every tier from seed to sale of cannabis, you can apply that skill set. And so it really depends on what you want to do personally. So I would say just kind of hone in on that. And then when you figure out which part of the industry you want to work in, then start looking for those opportunities. And again, I'll send you more information. We're now at 12:30, so I just want to thank you all for attending this first day of this session. We're going to be doing this bi-weekly until January 30th. If you signed up for today, you might be getting more information for the other sessions. I do invite you to come. You do not have to come to all of them. They're all geared towards different things to get you guys just the information and the resources that you need to get your pathway started in cannabis. We want you guys to land a job. We want you guys to, if you're looking for entrepreneurship, right, that you understand what that pathway looks like in those resources. Or if you're looking to get more education around your career, we want you to know where to find those resources. And so this is very important to us. And again, we're so happy that you were able to join us. We'll be doing this bi-weekly and you'll get updates. I will be sending a email with the deck from Dan and today, and eventually this will be uploaded online for you to view. All right. I appreciate you all. Thank you and enjoy your Saturday. Bye, everyone.